Ever switch mobile providers but kept your old number? You pop in a new SIM card and boom, same number, different network. Seems simple, right?
Yeah, you'd think so.
Well, today we're going deep on that boom moment because behind the scenes, it's surprisingly complex.
Oh, it definitely is. Way more than most people
We're
realize.
diving into the world of mobile phone number porting using a real-world example from Austria.
Right, because it's not just about like magically switching numbers over at midnight.
Sadly, no fairies involved.
Not that I've seen,
Right.
but we do have something better. A process map. It's kind of like a flow chart. Shows each step of this number porting journey.
Okay, so no magic, but we do have a map. I like it. So where does our listener who wants to switch providers and keep your number fit into all of this?
So it all starts with you, the customer, making that request to port your number to a new provider.
Easy enough.
And in Austria, get this, the new provider is actually required by law to make this happen.
Interesting. So they have to figure out how to make it work no matter what.
Exactly. And because this happens so often, like all the time, they rely on these automated systems, kind of like digital traffic controllers, to manage everything.
So instead of cars, we're directing phone numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing this flowchart helps us see how those numbers move through the system.
Exactly. Think of your phone number like a digital package being shipped to a new address.
Okay, I like the analogy.
It has to go through customs, security checks, the whole 9 yards. This flowchart, or BPMN diagram, as it's formally known, lays out all those steps.
Okay, walk us through it. What happens after I, the customer, hit that port my number button? What's the first hurdle?
So right away, the new provider has to make sure the request is legit. They'll verify your identity, all that good stuff. Then things get really interesting. They need to check if your number is actually available on their network.
Available. But I thought I already had the number.
You do, but in Austria, they have the system called free choice of number. It basically means your number might already be active with your new provider, but assigned to a different type of service. So they have to make sure there are no conflicts.
That's pretty wild. It's like your number has a double life you never knew about.
It kind of does. And sometimes those numbers can run into, well, trouble. Ever heard of phone numbers being blacklisted or blocked?
You mean like getting a bad credit score, but for my phone?
That's a great way to put it. It usually happens because of unpaid bills with the previous provider. It's something I've seen in other customer onboarding processes too. They essentially put a hold on the number until everything's settled.
Interesting. It reminds me of a friend who is always chasing the best deals, switching providers every few months. These processes must be tough to handle, that kind of back and forth.
You're absolutely right. And honestly, it's more common than you think, especially with things like telecom or energy, where people are always looking for better rates. And you're right, those frequent switchers are the ones who really feel the pain when these systems aren't working smoothly, which unfortunately can happen. It's complicated.
And those complexities are what can lead to delays and headaches for customers, right?
Exactly. With so many moving parts, there's a lot that can go wrong. Think of it like a chain reaction. One miscommunication between providers, or a poorly integrated system, and boom, a bottleneck appears.
So like a traffic jam, but for my phone number.
Pretty much. And to make matters worse, some companies are still using outdated technology that slows everything down.
Is that where legacy systems, as they're often called, come into play? Earlier, we were talking about microservices and how this flowchart helps us see where things can be improved.
Exactly. Process modeling, as it's called, helps companies see the bigger picture. They can pinpoint those outdated systems that are causing bottlenecks.
So like identifying the slowest part of an assembly line.
You got it. Instead of just making existing processes work, they can pinpoint which microservices, those individual pieces of software that make up the whole system, are taking too long or are causing the most errors. It's like being able to zoom in on that traffic jam and figure out what's really causing it.
Okay, I'm starting to see how a simple number port can turn into a tech headache if we're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
But what does this actually look like for the customer? What happens when that bottleneck does pop up?
Well, imagine this. You've just switched providers. You're all excited to keep your trusty number.
Right, feeling good.
You pop in that new SIM card, expecting everything to just, work seamlessly.
Like magic.
Exactly. But then days go by, maybe even a whole week.
Uh-oh.
And your old number is still dead on your new phone. Talk about frustrating, right?
Totally. You're stuck in phone limbo, unable to make or receive calls, probably wondering if you made a huge mistake switching in the first place.
Yeah, it's the ultimate customer service nightmare. And often it boils down to those bottlenecks we were talking about. Maybe the number verification got hung up somewhere, or there was a delay in communication with the old provider.
Makes sense.
Whatever the reason, it usually means someone from customer service has to manually step in and, try to untangle the mess.
Which, let's be honest, probably means even more waiting and frustration for the customer who's already on edge.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a lose-lose situation. And that's why designing efficient processes, like right from the get-go, is so important.
So we can avoid this whole mess.
Exactly. It's all about reducing those manual interventions, automating as much as possible, and making sure everyone involved is on the same page.
So it's about making the system so smooth, it's almost like those potential hiccups never even existed.
That's the dream. It's about creating a seamless experience for the customer so they never even have to think about all the, complex machinery working behind the scenes.
Right. But let's say the system does hit a snag, and a customer service rep has to get involved. What are they up against?
Well, often they're dealing with a bunch of different systems that don't really, talk to each other very well.
Well,
Imagine having to check one database for customer information, another one for the number status, and then manually update a third to actually start the porting. It's a recipe for errors and delays.
and probably a major headache for the rep, who's probably already dealing with, like, a mountain of similar cases.
Absolutely. It just highlights the need for better integration, more automation, and tools that can actually track these processes in real time.
Right. It sounds like there's a lot of room for improvement there. Yeah. So we've been digging into the technical side of things, but how does all of this translate into the overall customer experience?
Think of it this way. Number porting is often a customer's first real interaction with their new provider. It's their first date, so to speak.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
If it's a smooth, enjoyable experience, it sets the tone for a positive relationship. But if it's full of, hiccups, delays, and frustration,
Not a great start.
exactly, not a great start. It can leave a lasting bad taste.
It's like making a first impression, but instead of judging someone's outfit, you're judging their ability to, handle your phone number.
Exactly, and we all know how important first impressions are, right? A seamless number porting experience tells the customer, hey, we're competent, we're efficient, and we actually value your time.
It's like a trust-building exercise.
Exactly. It builds trust and makes them feel good about choosing you as their new provider.
While a negative experience might have them running back to their old provider faster than you can say, dropped call.
You said it. It's just a really powerful reminder that even these, technical behind-the-scenes processes have a huge impact on how customers perceive a company and whether or not they stick around.
So for our listener who's maybe thinking about switching providers or maybe just curious about what happens behind the scenes, what are the, key takeaways here?
First off, don't underestimate how complex something as seemingly simple as porting a number can actually be. There's a lot happening behind the scenes to make that magic happen.
Right, no fairies, remember.
Exactly. Second, be prepared for, potential bumps in the road. Try to be patient. These things happen.
Good advice.
And finally, remember that the provider you choose plays a big role in how smooth or not so smooth the whole experience will be.
Those are all great points. And I think it also highlights how important clear communication is throughout the process, too. If a delay does happen, the provider should just be upfront about it, keep the customer in the loop.
100%. Transparency and open communication can work wonders, especially when things get, a little bumpy.
So it seems like efficient process design isn't just about, fancy technology. It's about creating a smooth and positive customer experience, from start to finish.
You got it. It's about making those complex processes invisible to the customer so all they experience is a seamless transition.
Now, before we jump into some lighter observations about this whole process, because, believe it or not, we need to address one last but crucial aspect, right? The bottom line. So we've covered the technical maze and the customer's experience, but let's zoom out to the bigger picture here. What does this whole number porting saga tell us about how the telecom industry is handling things like automation and, going digital?
Yeah, it's a really interesting case study because on one hand, you see a lot of automation already in place, especially for tasks like checking numbers, their status, all that. So that shows how much the industry is really embracing those tech solutions, which is great.
Right, they're on board.
But on the other hand, we still see those moments where a human has to step in and, fix things, which kind of tells us there's still room to grow.
So like a teenager, they're making progress, but not quite independent yet.
Exactly. And looking ahead, I think the industry is headed towards making this whole process like completely automated, from start to finish. No more humans needed.
Wow, the dream.
But to get there, they'll need even smarter systems, ones that can talk to each other, like seamlessly, even across different providers.
Okay, so that sounds like a massive challenge,
Yeah.
even for a, tech-savvy industry like telecom.
Oh, it definitely is. But the payoff is huge, right? We're talking fast reporting times, fewer errors, which everybody loves, lower costs for companies, and of course, a much smoother experience for, the customer who ultimately makes all the difference.
Right, everybody wins.
Exactly.
So for our listeners who might be, years away from their next phone upgrade, what does this future, actually mean for them?
It means switching providers will, become easier than ever. Imagine, porting your number in minutes without any of the stress or the waiting we've been talking about.
That sounds pretty ideal.
That's the future we're moving towards.
A future where switching phone providers is as easy as, ordering takeout? Sign me up.
Okay, before we wrap up, I have to admit something. We've been, dissecting this whole process with a very serious lens.
But I can't help but find some humor in the details.
Oh, absolutely. I'm all ears. Humor is, the best way to make even the densest topics a little more digestible. All right.
Right. This whole idea of a phone number having a, life cycle and a history, like it's a little traveler, going on these adventures through different networks.
I love it.
I don't know why, but I find that hilarious.
Me too. Just imagine the stories they could tell, right? Like, oh, I used to belong to a lawyer, but now I'm with a musician. Life's wild.
Right. Or, yeah, I've been blacklisted a couple times, made some bad choices, but I'm, trying to turn my life around. Okay, maybe we're getting a little carried away here. But it just goes to show, even in the most technical, seemingly dry topics, there's always room for a little fun and imagination.
Absolutely. And sometimes, finding that humor makes learning about this stuff even, more enjoyable.
So from those hidden complexities we never even think about to the potential for things to go, hilariously wrong, this deep dive has given us a whole new appreciation for what happens every time we switch providers and, keep our number.
It's a good reminder that there's always, more than meets the eye, even in the most ordinary parts of our, daily lives.
And for our listeners, here's something to ponder. What other everyday conveniences rely on systems this intricate? Your online orders? Your food deliveries? Heck, even just turning on the lights. Think about the, incredible orchestration happening behind the scenes to make it all look effortless. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and you might be surprised by what you discover. Until next time, happy deep diving.